Before diving into these forgotten stories of survival and suffering, if you enjoy learning about the hidden truths of history, consider hitting that like button and subscribing for more content like this. And please comment below to let me know where you're listening from. I find it incredible that we're exploring these ancient stories together from different parts of the world, connected across time and space by our shared curiosity about the past. In the dim glow of a single tallow candle, its flames sputtering against the draughts that seep through the cracks in the castle's ancient mortar, a girl named Matilda stands frozen, her small hands clutching the edge of a wooden chest carved with imperial eagles. Born around 1002 AD in the royal court of England, she had known from the cradle that her life was not her own. Her father, King Henry I, ruler of a realm stretched from the misty shores of Normandy to the rugged hills of Wales, saw in her not a daughter to cherish but a pawn to secure alliances against the shifting sands of European power. By 1109 AD, at the tender age of 7, envoys from the Holy Roman Empire arrived at the English court, bearing proposals from Emperor Henry V, a man in his 20s, battle-hardened and ambitious, seeking to bind his vast domains to the Anglo-Norman throne through marriage. The betrothal was sealed in Utrecht on April 10, 1110 AD, with Matilda dispatched across the Channel to Germany, a land of dense forests and towering cathedrals, where the air carried the sharp tang of pine and the distant clang of blacksmiths forging swords for endless wars. Placed under the guardianship of Archbishop Bruno of Trier, she learned the guttural tones of the German tongue, the intricate dances of court etiquette, and the weight of a crown that would soon press upon her brow. But beneath the lessons in Latin prayers and embroidered silks, a quiet dread grew, unspoken even in her private confessions to the chapel's stone saints. What child could fathom the intimacies demanded of a wife, the surrender of her body to a stranger's touch, in a bedchamber where privacy was a myth, and witnesses lurked behind curtains to confirm the union's validity? The wedding came on January 7, 1114 AD, in the Grand Cathedral of Mainz, its arches soaring like the ambitions of the men who orchestrated it. Matilda, now 12, walked the aisle in a gown of crimson velvet, heavy with gold thread that chafed her skin, her veil a gossamer barrier against the stares of assembled nobles from across the empire. The air was thick with incense, its smoky tendrils curling around the altar, where vows were exchanged in Latin, words she understood but whose full meaning eluded her youthful grasp. Henry V, tall and stern, his face marked by the scars of campaigns against rebellious dukes, took her hand with a grip that spoke of possession rather than affection. As the bells tolled echoing through the Rhine Valley, the procession led to the imperial palace, where feasts of roasted boar and spiced wine masked the underlying tension. That night, in a chamber adorned with tapestries depicting heroic conquests, the reality descended. Servants stripped the bed of its linens, preparing for the ritual that would prove her purity and his potency, a custom rooted in the era's obsession with legitimate heirs. Matilda's pulse raced, her breath shallow as the cold air raised gooseflesh on her arms. The emperor, his breath heavy with mead, approached with the entitlement of a ruler accustomed to command. No chronicles record her tears or protests, for such vulnerabilities were erased from history's pages, but the power imbalance was stark. A girl of 12 yielding to a man of 28, her body unready for the demands placed upon it. In the empire's eyes, this consummation sealed the alliance, but for Matilda, it marked the erasure of childhood, the first scar in a life of political maneuvering. Years later, when Henry V died childless on May 23, 1125 AD in Utrecht, leaving Matilda a widow at 23, the marriage's fruitlessness haunted her. No heirs had come, perhaps due to her youth or the emperor's health, plagued by the rigours of constant warfare. Returned to her father's court in Normandy, she carried the title of empress, a hollow crown that amplified her isolation. Whispers at court suggested her barrenness was a curse, fueling her resolve in future battles for the English throne. But in those early nights, alone with her thoughts amid the rustle of silk sheets, the fear lingered, not just of pain but of failure to produce the sons that dynasties demanded, a burden that would define her legacy. Across the Channel, in the sun-drenched vineyards of Aquitaine, another young heiress faced a similar fate, her story intertwined with the scents of blooming lavender and the salty breeze from the Atlantic. Eleanor, born around 1122 AD in the opulent court of Poitiers, inherited one of Europe's richest duchies upon her father's death in 1137 AD. At 15, she was a vision of vitality, with auburn hair that cascaded like autumn leaves and eyes sharp as a falcon's gaze. Yet, her inheritance made her a target, a prize to be claimed before rivals could snatch her away. King Louis VI of France, on his deathbed, orchestrated her marriage to his son Louis VII to merge Aquitaine's vast lands stretching from the Pyrenees to the Loire with the Capetian crown. The union was hasty, solemnized on July 25, 1137 AD, in the Cathedral of Saint André in Bordeaux, where the summer heat mingled with the aroma of beeswax candles and fresh rushes strewn across the floor. Eleanor, dressed in a kirtle of sapphire blue silk, embroidered with the golden lions of her house, exchanged vows before an assembly of French and Aquitanian lords, their armour clinking softly in the pews. Louis, 17 and pious, his face pale from monastic upbringing, seemed more monk than monarch, his hands trembling as he placed the ring on her finger. The feast that followed overflowed with roasted peacocks and troubadour songs, but Eleanor's mind wandered to the chamber awaiting them, its canopied bed a symbol of the duties ahead. As dusk fell, casting long shadows over the Garonne River, attendants led the couple to their quarters. The bedding ceremony, a ritual as old as the feudal bonds it reinforced, unfolded with priests blessing the mattress and courtiers toasting their fertility with goblets of hippocras, a spiced wine that burned going down. Eleanor's heart fluttered beneath her camise, the fine linen clinging to her skin in the humid air. Louis, awkward and inexperienced, approached with hesitation, his devotion to the church clashing with the carnal expectations of kingship. Chronicles hint at his reluctance, perhaps born from religious scruples that viewed pleasure as sin, leaving Eleanor to navigate the night's intimacies with a mix of curiosity and apprehension. The pressure was immense. Without sons, her position was precarious, her duchy vulnerable to annulment or seizure. For years, the marriage yielded only daughters, Marie in 1145 AD and Alix in 1150 AD, fueling Louis's doubts and Eleanor's frustrations. Whispers in the Parisian court spoke of her spirited nature clashing with his piety, her love of poetry and hunting contrasting his fasts and prayers. During the Second Crusade from 1147 to 1149 AD, tensions boiled over in Antioch, where rumours of her affair with her uncle Raymond swirled, though unsubstantiated. By 1152 AD, at Beaugency near Orléans, the marriage was annulled on grounds of consanguinity, a convenient pretext for deeper incompatibilities. Eleanor, now 30, emerged stronger, her fears transformed into ambition, as she remarried Henry II of England mere weeks later on May 18, 1152 AD, in Poitiers, birthing 8 children and shaping the Angevin Empire. Yet in that first Bordeaux night, the fear was raw, the fear of a stranger's embrace, the weight of producing heirs in a world where women's worth was measured in sons, and the unspoken dread of childbirth's perils, where fever and hemorrhage claimed lives as readily as battlefield swords. Eleanor's resilience would define her as Queen of France and then England, but the vulnerability of that wedding eve lingered, a shadow in her legendary independence. Far to the north, in the fog-shrouded coasts of Flanders, a different tale unfolded, one of defiance amid the clamour of looms weaving the region's famed cloth. Matilda, born circa 1031 AD to Count Baldwin V of Flanders and Adela of France, grew up in a court buzzing with merchants and diplomats, the air redolent of sea salt and freshly dyed wool. By her late teens, she caught the eye of William, Duke of Normandy, a bastard son risen to power through sheer ferocity, his illegitimacy a stain that barred him from many noble matches. Legends embroidered by later chroniclers like a tapestry's intricate border claim Matilda initially rebuffed him, declaring she would wed no bastard, only to be dragged through Bruges' muddy streets by her hair until she yielded. Historians dismiss this as myth, attributing it to Norman propaganda, but the truth held its own drama. Their betrothal, around 1049 AD, sparked papal ire, for they were distant cousins violating church prohibitions on consanguinity designed to prevent inbred alliances. Pope Leo IX banned the union at the Council of Reims in 1049 AD, forcing a delay that tested William's patience. Matilda, at 20, felt the strain, her chambers in Bruges filled with the scent of lavender sachets to calm nerves frayed by uncertainty. Whispers among her ladies-in-waiting spoke of the Duke's temper, forged in the fires of Norman rebellions, and the risks of defying Rome. Excommunication loomed, a spiritual death in an age when salvation was paramount. The wedding finally occurred in 1051 AD, likely at Eu in Normandy, a discreet affair amid the ban, with vows exchanged in a chapel overlooking the Channel's churning waves. That night, in a hall where hearths crackled with oak logs, the consummation proceeded under the shadow of ecclesiastical disapproval. Matilda's gown of Flemish linen, soft against her skin, gave way to the realities of marital duty, her husband's calloused hands a reminder of his warrior life. Fear manifested not in violence but in the unknown. Would the Pope's curse render their children illegitimate, dooming the dynasty? To appease the church, they founded two abbeys in Caen, the Abbaye aux Limes and Abbaye aux Dames, securing a dispensation in 1059 AD from Pope Nicholas II. Matilda bore 9 or 10 children, including William Rufus and Henry I, her fertility a triumph over initial apprehensions. As Duchess and later Queen after the conquest of 1036 AD, she governed Normandy during William's absences, her seal on charters a mark of shared power. Yet the wedding night's unease echoed in her later conflicts, like the 1079 AD quarrel over their son Robert Curlius, where familial bonds strained under political pressures. In her final days at Caen in 1083 AD, Matilda confessed sins that perhaps included those early doubts, her death on November 2 leaving William grief-stricken, his own end 4 years later. Shifting eastward to the opulent halls of Paris, where the Seine's waters lapped against stone quays laden with spices from distant ports, Isabella entered the world around 1295 AD, daughter of King Philip IV of France and Joan I of Navarre. Raised amid the grandeur of the Louvre, with its gardens blooming in spring and halls echoing with minstrels' lutes, she embodied the Capetian lineage's grace, fair-haired, intelligent, and destined for a throne. By 1307 AD, negotiations sealed her fate, marriage to Edward II of England, a union to mend frayed ties over Gascony, the last English foothold in France after Philip's aggressive expansions. At 12, Isabella crossed the Channel in January 1308 AD, her ship battling winter gales to dock at Boulogne-sur-Mer. The wedding on January 25 unfolded in the town's cathedral, its nave filled with the aroma of frankincense and the glint of armoured knights. Isabella, in a gown of silver tissue veiled in gauze, exchanged vows with Edward, 23 and handsome, his Plantagenet features softened by a love of theatre and fine arts. But joy curdled swiftly. At the banquet, Edward bestowed lavish gifts not on his bride but on Piers Gaveston, his favourite, seating the Gascon knight beside him while Isabella sat sidelined, her uncles seething at the insult. The wedding night, in a chamber warmed by braziers glowing with charcoal, unfolded amid this tension. Attendants performed the bedding, drawing curtains around the four-poster bed, as priests murmured blessings. Isabella's fear was palpable, the cold draught on her skin, the weight of Edward's indifference, his eyes distant as if envisioning another. Chronicles note his preference for Gaveston, hinting at a lack of ardour that left the marriage unconsummated that eve, or at least unfulfilling. Political whispers amplified her isolation. Without immediate heirs, her position was tenuous, her body scrutinised for signs of pregnancy. Years brought children, Edward III in 1312 AD at Windsor, followed by 3 more, but resentment festered. By 1325 AD, sent to France to negotiate peace, Isabella refused return, fearing assassination by Edward's new favourites, the Despensers. Allied with Roger Mortimer, she invaded England in 1326 AD, deposing Edward II and ruling as regent until 1330 AD, when her son seized power. Her later years at Castle Rising in Norfolk, until her death on August 22, 1358 AD, were marked by quiet influence, but the wedding night's humiliation scarred her, fueling a queen's transformation from pawn to player. In the verdant fields of Anjou, where the Loire River wound like a silver thread through vineyards heavy with grapes, Margaret was born on March 23, 1430 AD, to Renée of Anjou and Isabella of Lorraine. Her childhood, amid the Renaissance stirrings of art and learning, prepared her for a role in the intricate web of European diplomacy. By 1444 AD, as the Hundred Years' War ground towards stalemate, English envoys proposed her marriage to King Henry VI, a pious but fragile monarch, to secure a truce. At 15, Margaret embodied hope for peace, her dowry a modest 20,000 francs offset by the cession of Maine. She arrived in England on April 9, 1445 AD, at Portsmouth, her ship greeted by cheering crowds and the salty tang of the Solent. The wedding occurred on April 23 at Titchfield Abbey in Hampshire, a modest Cistercian house where vows were spoken before an altar draped in white samite. Margaret, in a dress of embroidered satin, her dark hair bound in pearls, faced Henry, 23 and gentle, his hands soft from prayer rather than sword. The feast featured subtleties, sugar sculptures of lions and eagles, but the air hummed with political undercurrents, Suffolk's orchestration drawing baronial ire. That night, in the Abbey's guest quarters, with walls echoing the monks' chants, the consummation proceeded. Henry's mental fragility, foreshadowing his later breakdowns, may have tempered the encounter, his touch hesitant amid the scent of beeswax and herbs strewn on the floor. Margaret's apprehensions centred on the unknown, a foreign land, a husband prone to saintly abstractions, and the imperative to bear heirs in a court rife with factions. No immediate pregnancy followed. Their son Edward arrived only in 1453 AD at Westminster, amid suspicions of illegitimacy fueled by Henry's catatonia. The marriage's political weight crushed her. By 1455 AD, as regent during Henry's insanity, she convened councils at Coventry, her decisions igniting the Wars of the Roses. Defeats at Tewkesbury in 1471 AD saw her son slain, Henry murdered, and Margaret imprisoned until ransomed to France in 1475 AD, dying destitute on August 25, 1482 AD, at Dampierre-sur-Loire. Her wedding night's quiet fears blossomed into a lifetime of warfare, her resolve forged in that initial vulnerability. Deep in the Welsh marches where mist clung to the valleys like a shroud, Margaret Beaufort's story began on May 30, 1443 AD, at Bletsoe Castle in Bedfordshire. Descended from John of Gaunt's legitimised line, she inherited vast estates, making her a coveted ward. By 1455 AD, King Henry VI granted her to his half-brother Edmund Tudor, Earl of Richmond, to bolster Lancastrian claims. At 12, Margaret wed on November 1, 1455 AD, likely at her manor in Lamphay, Pembrokeshire, the ceremony simple amid the threat of Yorkist unrest. The chamber, lit by rushlights flickering in iron holders, smelled of peat smoke and dried rosemary. Edmund, 24 and battle-tested, consummated the marriage swiftly, his urgency driven by dynastic needs. Margaret's terror was visceral, the pain of an immature body, the cold sweat on her brow, the fear of what this act portended. Pregnant by early 1456 AD, she widowed when Edmund died of plague on November 3 at Carmarthen Castle. Alone at Pembroke Castle, she laboured on January 28, 1457 AD, her 13-year-old frame racked by agony that left permanent scars, rendering her barren thereafter. Her son Henry, future king, was her sole child, a miracle amid trauma, remarried twice for protection to Henry Stafford in 1458 AD at Maxstoke Castle, and strategically to Thomas Stanley in 1472 AD at Knowsley Hall. She navigated the rose's thorns, plotting Henry's ascent. By her death on June 29 AD at Westminster, she had founded colleges and shaped Tudor England, but the wedding night's shadow endured, a testament to the era's cruelties. These tales, woven from the threads of history, reveal the silent horrors behind gilded crowns. Queens, bound by duty's iron grip, faced nights where fear was the uninvited guest, their bodies bartered for power, their spirits tested in the crucible of expectation. And yet from such darkness emerged resilience, echoing through centuries, reminding us that even in the hush of a medieval chamber, the human heart beats defiant against the night.